All right, it is 6:32. I'm calling this meeting to order, the Champaign County Board Community Violence Prevention Task Force. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Carter,
Here.
Esri,
Here.
Fortato, Lakshin,
Here.
Michaels, Sexton, Patterson.
Here. Could I have a motion for the approval of the minutes from July 12th, 2022?
So move.
With Carter
I'll
and
second.
Lakshin. All right, any discussion? Ooh. I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I'll
All
second that too.
Carter and Lakshin. Any adjustments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, that passes. Could I have a motion for the approval of the minutes from July 12th, 2022?
So moved.
Esri,
Second. Carter.
Carter. All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Next we have public participation. I've not received any slips. Is there any members of the public who aren't also presenting who wanted to address the committee? All right. Next we have communications. Are there any board members that have communications? All right, seeing none. For our first presentation, and for the presentations tonight, we're trying to keep them to about 5 minutes because there are quite a few. Then we'll do our questions and answers afterwards. Our first one is the Chamber of Commerce I Read, I Count program.
Good evening. I'm Laura Wise. I'm President and CEO of the Champaign County Chamber of Commerce, and I have with me Madeline Herman. She is our Public Policy Director. We want to thank you for letting us share some information with you this evening about I Read, I Count. And I want to start by talking about what the program is and what we're trying to accomplish. So I Read, I Count is a program that puts volunteers into the classroom working directly with students, students specifically who need the extra help to help close the achievement gap. Community members then spend about an hour a week in our elementary schools to help early learners with their essential reading and math skills. All volunteers are trained on a specifically designed curriculum, and it's a weekly 1-hour commitment for 6 to 7 weeks each semester. So each volunteer is volunteering for about 6 to 7 hours for that semester. But the volunteers can make a world of difference for the children with difficulties with their early learning competencies. So I Read, I Count. It's a grassroots community effort that began in 2019 as a pilot project. And quite honestly, we're still in a pilot project because we were disrupted due to COVID. But in 2019, we started with 50 volunteers in the classroom, specifically Unit 4, and it was the K through 1 classrooms. So this semester, we have 200 volunteers, and we are in 11 Champaign and Urbana elementary schools. Each volunteer, as I said before, it's about 6 to 7 weeks a semester, so about 6 hours or 7 hours of volunteer time. The volunteer works with 3 to 5 students in that 1 hour's time. And then there are some students that will only see a volunteer for, one time a week, but then we have others. So if that classroom in particular has 5 volunteers for the week, that student may actually see a volunteer every day that week, which basically gives that child about an extra hour and 15 minutes of individualized time with an adult working on their math and literacy skills. So why this matters? So the districts are measured, they have the state standardized test scores, and we measure, the first benchmark is at 3rd grade. So if you look at Unit 4 scores for 2022, so 23% of the students in 3rd grade had met or exceeded in reading, and 28.6% of the students had met or exceeded in math. Urbana, for the same test period, 7.7% of the students were meeting or exceeding in reading. And if you want to flip that number, that basically means 92.3% of the third graders were not meeting or exceeding in reading. 15.2% of the students were meeting or exceeding in math in Urbana. So what's important to know is up until third grade, you learn to read. From fourth grade on, you read to learn. So if you are not reading by third grade, your ability to learn moving forward is very difficult. The thing is, with our rates, if you also then, these numbers are not new. I mean, they have varied over the years, but they have always been within a certain range. But if you look at the numbers over the years and then you look at our graduation rates, the numbers don't correlate. So we have high 80s in terms of graduation rates, which means that we are putting kids through the system who do not have the foundational math and literacy skills that they need. In 2019, when we started to do, this is just a sampling, this was a kindergarten class, so the kindergartners for the 2019 I Read portion. And so what they were focused on is letter identification in kindergarten. And you have 26 letters in the alphabet times 2 because you have upper and lower case, so it's 52 letters that they have to be able to identify. So on average, in the first year that we did this, the first semester we did it, 96.93% of the students saw some sort of improvement in their letter identification. Almost 37%, more than doubled the letters that they could identify. The largest improvement was a student who went from only being able to identify 4 letters to identifying all 52 by the time he had spent his 6 or 7 weeks in the program. And then the average improvement for all the students was going from 24 letters to 45 letters, so a difference of 22 letters. So we believe this program has the ability to change the trajectory of a child's life. But what is the risk if we do nothing? So there is a correlation between reading, math literacy, and juvenile delinquency. A study published in the Journal of Research in Crime and Delinquency found that the poor reading ability in early adolescence was a significant predictor of involvement in the juvenile justice system. The study followed a sample of over 4,000 students from first grade through early adulthood and found that those who struggled with reading in middle school were more likely to be involved in the juvenile justice system, and even when they were controlling for other factors such as race, gender, and social economic status. The National Assessment of Education has also found that students who score at the below basic level in reading on third grade assessments are more likely to have a negative outcome in school and beyond, including dropping out of high school, having limited job prospects, and being involved in the criminal justice system. A report from the Annie E. Casey Foundation found that children who are not reading at grade level by the end of third grade are 4 times more likely to drop out of high school than those who are proficient readers, and that dropout rates are higher for low-income students and students of color. So our ask today is to consider funding the program. As of right now, iRead Account is done solely on we have a very small grant from the United Way, but everything we have been doing up to this point has been completely through volunteer efforts and in-kind contributions from various organizations. And so what we would like to do is find funding that we could spread over a 3-year period. And that would basically start us with a kindergarten class that we could follow kindergarten, first grade, second grade. Then the second year of funding would be, that kindergarten class would then be in first grade, that third year they would be in second grade, and then we would be able to have a full snapshot of what how the children would score starting with kindergarten. But at the same time, you would be picking up another kindergarten class, another first grade class each year. So that is our ask. And then I just wanted to share, these are the partners of our program. So as you can see, it is a community effort. It is, we are just serving as sort of the facilitators to coordinate the program. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, and thank you very much for allowing us to present.
Thank you. Questions?
Are we not saving them till the end of the whole thing, or just the, okay. Got it. Sorry, is there any long-term plan to spread this out to other schools or districts within the county?
In an ideal world, yes, but because we had sort of starts and stops with COVID, we really want to be able to cement the program and get it figured out, and right now just working through Champaign and Urbana schools to get it started.
Yeah, a follow-up. I'm sorry, how many schools did you say that you cover right now?
This semester, we have 11 schools.
11, and that's in Unit 4 in
And Unit
Urbana?
ones.
Okay.
So,
Could you tell me the percentage of African-American participation?
For this semester, I cannot. I can tell you after we're done with it and we do the assessment for the program.
Okay.
The schools will have that information for us.
Is the focus primarily on African-Americans because of the gap between whites and blacks in this community?
The purpose of this program is to close the achievement gap.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick question. Regional Office of Education, do they have anything that they're helping you with also on some of this?
We have not worked directly with the Regional Office of Education. We've been working primarily with both districts, the administration of both districts.
This is maybe more directed for the board members. You all have a chart of the ads. I do want to say I helped put this chart together, and this is my mistake, my apologies. I think their full ask was for $320,160, because you're asking for 3 years of funding, correct?
So that would be the total to spread it over 3 years, correct?
And this is also just for the board, just to kind of landscape where we are, just so you could kind of keep this in mind. And then I'm going to actually ask you a question.
Sure.
I don't think we're anticipating making any decisions today. Like, we're just going to hear from everybody, and then we could go ponder in our hearts and come back. But just so you have a sense of the landscape of what the funding we have $2,072,963 unallocated specifically in the community violence money, and then $335,000 specifically in the housing money. And in our past iteration of this committee, we gave some, if you recall, quite a bit of the first round of money to Champaign County Housing Authority. So we thought that having a conversation about both of those in here made sense, because we don't really have a committee just for housing. The other thing I wanted, so that's about $2,407,906, not about, it's $63 that is unallocated as of right now. And our goal is to have that fully allocated by this committee. So now the question for you is, one of the things that this committee is really concerned about, and this is for everybody, so y'all can anticipate this question. And just in case you're wondering how, the luck of the draw, we just put them on the agenda alphabetically. So sorry, YWCA.
We were last.
We were trying to think of what's fair, and we just decided alphabetically. But the question I have for you is, one of the things that we're really concerned about as a board is we have a hard deadline that this funding has to be spent, right, by 2026, and a hard deadline. We've really been pushing that the programmatic side of things, we're really looking for through 2024, just because we want to make sure that all of that funding is allocated and is spent, because we don't want to give any money back to the federal government. So how confident are you in the timeline for these expenditures, that if we give you the full bore of what you're asking for, that you'd be able to spend it in that time frame?
I could probably spend it tomorrow. But we would stretch it out intentionally, because it's really important for us to get a full snapshot of a kindergarten class through second grade, because that'll really tell us whether we're moving the needle or not. But there is a full commitment from both superintendents in Champaign and in Urbana to continue this program. In fact, we were a little bit concerned we weren't going to have enough volunteers, which is one of the reasons there's a heavy emphasis on volunteer marketing, because we have to find the volunteers to put into the classroom, and then we have to keep the volunteers that are there happy so that they want to come back.
I I want to say too, I know you've kind of been in a holding pattern with the county. You submitted this a while ago. We didn't have enough funding in the first round of money, but I'm really glad that you persisted and came back. And also shout out to Executive Steve Summers, who I think every time I see him and we talk about this, he's like, don't forget about I read, I count. So,
We appreciate that.
But I appreciate your persistence, and know that it wasn't that we didn't like your proposal the first time. We only had half the money the first time. So we were really interested in it, and we're glad to see you back.
Yeah, it's absolutely not a problem. We appreciate that you took the time to hear about our program.
If I can just add to what Stephanie said for the good of the group, one of the things that we all are concerned about is the sustainability of the program. And I know you had just alluded to the schools wanting to take this up after they saw it, but that is something that we look at very dearly because we want all of them to succeed and not just crash at the end of a certain time period. So that will probably be a question that we will ask if you don't answer it within your presentation. Thank you.
I mean, we started this program with no money. You know, the Chamber's interest in this program is we wait till kids get to high school and then everybody's scratching their head when they don't know why they're not ready for the workforce, and that's because we didn't do the work 20 years ago. And so for us as an organization, this is a long-term strategy for workforce development. So we as an organization are committed to doing it if we have to, you know, beg, borrow, and steal to get it done. And that's what we've been doing up to this point. Funding would allow for us to do it right.
This is maybe not truly germane to the ask, but just a question for knowledge, I guess, and maybe also to kind of get it out there in the public. Are you looking for volunteers now, or when is that period going to be for volunteers? I mean, again, just to maybe kind of get it out there. I mean, obviously you'll be looking for it for next semester, but are you currently looking? Is it?
So we're running the program for this semester, but we will start recruitment for the fall, where we'll do the iCount portion, and that we'll start recruiting probably mid-July. Because for those that are new volunteers, they have to go through background checks. And I would note that all the pictures of children that you've seen in this, these are all children that are actually in our community and that are part of the program.
This is also not maybe germane to this specific, but we also have given the Chamber ARPA money for, I think, the e-commerce and the microloan, and I know that that's in process of being developed, but I also think that some of those things, although that came from a different pot of money, does speak to community violence. So the ability of people to have small businesses and have the investment that they need to get those businesses off the ground, I think is an important component of this. And so I would like to invite you to come back to address the full board on an update on how those things are going, probably this fall, like maybe August or
Would love to.
September. But I think that even though that money came from Samantha and Chris Store's task force on small
Thank you,
business.
Samantha.
But I do think, I mean, we have these categories, but I think they intersect. And I think specifically, especially the microloans, I mean, it wasn't from this pot of money, but I think it speaks to this pot of money, and making sure that that pot of money is hooked up with, you know, First Followers and Dream and some of the folks that we have doing the on-the-ground work, I think is an important piece. So I'm really excited to have you in the room with some of the other groups because I see how these connect.
Yeah, we would be happy to follow up at any time.
I had a question about, so you said you're currently serving 11 schools?
This semester, we're serving 11 schools. So every semester, the teachers in the schools select to participate, and this semester it happens to be 11.
Okay. So would additional funding allow you to expand that to different buildings, or is that just going to depend on whether the building wants to cooperate with the program?
We will serve as many buildings in Champaign and Urbana as we can right now. Going beyond Champaign and Urbana districts right now we're not ready to scale yet beyond that. But yes, we can serve any or any elementary building in Champaign and Urbana.
Okay.
One thing I don't think I saw in your budget, and maybe I'm missing it, is program evaluation. Are you thinking about doing any, like, outside evaluation? Because I've been a part of several of these kind of like startup programs, and that evaluation piece, especially when you want to think about scaling it later, is so important. I didn't know if that was a part of the landscape of what you were thinking about, or maybe it is on here and I'm just missing it.
So program evaluation right now, so the districts are doing the assessments of the kids. So that's already taken care of. At any point, we want to do maybe a broader evaluation. I bend Chancellor Jones' ear every time I see him about this program, so I feel confident that if I were to ask for some assistance from the university, that they would provide that.
Can you just tell me how the students are selected to participate in the program? Or is it referred by the teacher?
The students are selected by the teachers, so the teachers know which students need the most help. So it's important to note this is not a program for every student. This is specifically for the students who are behind, who need the additional assistance. So they are selected by the teachers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, anybody else? All right, thanks a lot, really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Next up is the Champaign County Stand Down for Veterans.
I'm gonna do something while you're inserting that. Sorry. There goes.
Okay. Hello, my name is Cheryl Walker, and I'm the commander of University of Illinois Shauna Morrison Post 2019. And I thank you for allowing us to be here again to discuss our project for homeless veteran stand-downs. What is a stand-down? A stand-down is a military term referring to an opportunity to achieve a brief respite from combat. Troops assemble in a base camp to receive new clothing, food, a relative degree of safety before returning back to combat. Today, stand-downs are partnered with federal partners, state and local entities, and businesses, and veterans, communities, and social and faith-based organizations to hold events for homeless veterans. Yes. Did you do it? So what happens at a stand down? Homeless veterans are provided with a broad range of necessities, including food, clothing, medical and legal and mental health assistance, job counseling and referrals, and most important, companionship and camaraderie. Committees are formed specifically to put on these events. Veteran service organizations, National Guard, Reserve units, homeless shelter programs, and healthcare providers. The U.S. Department of Veteran Service is a big part of putting on a stand down. The Champaign County did an annual count. And in that count, they said 137 individuals were identified as homeless. In that count, they said that 2 were identified as unsheltered, 98 were identified as household, 111 in the sheltered were in emergency shelters, and 24 were in transitional housing. No, but I didn't ask you to, oh. There's a study about violence against homeless people. It says there is a silence epidemic against the homeless. It said on any given night, there's over 500,000 people sleeping on the streets. It said without a door to lock, people without housing are vulnerable. This is violence against people without homes is a long-standing, if under-recognized crisis, is a long-standing crisis. It is another disastrous result from a series of policy failures that have conspired to leave more than 500,000 homeless people out on the street each night. In the study, it said that a study of homeless women found that 48% of them had experienced physical violence without a weapon, 18% with a weapon, and 18% had experienced sexual violence within the past 6 months. And in an ongoing study of homelessness, older adults had found that almost 12% had experienced physical or sexual assault in the prior 6 months, and yet violence is inevitable. They said that people had been attacked, almost half, when they had found homes. But despite the violence, it's where that we find that we criminalize the homeless people. You can go ahead and. I'm not sure if I don't know, is that appropriate to discuss it?
Take questions.
Okay. I think it's in order. Go ahead. No, I think it's not order.
Okay, so
Yeah. So,
that's your summary.
yeah. So, in conclusion, our summary, stand downs can help veterans and military families, and it raises awareness about needs in communities and show our veterans and military families that we can support them. We don't know all of them, but we owe all of them. Thank you.
Hi, thanks. Breathe. It's okay. Just real quickly, I'm seeing that this is something that you're wanting to do for the county.
Yes.
And I think the number you said there were 137
Yes.
for our county, so that's your count that you're going to use to try to,
Yes.
okay. And so, are there things that you have already done for this, or would this just be a one-time special program for these
No, actually,
people?
we've done a stand down before. Champaign County hasn't had one in 10 years. And so we participated in the last stand down that the county had. We, and so we would like to pick it back up. There's been several ones in surrounding areas. The next one, there was one in Springfield 2 weeks ago, and there was going to be another one in Peoria. The American Legion does a lot of work with the homeless. We participate in the count, actually. And so we have a list on how to be accountable for the funding, how to go out and get the volunteers and things like that, how to solicit volunteers to get the university involved, the other organizations involved, and things like that, to work with the National Guard and other organizations and things like that.
And I think you said you would be working with our Veterans Assistance Program that we fund here in the county. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I guess more of a statement, when we talk about like the count, sometimes policymakers, I feel like, discuss it without understanding the full context. HUD sets a date. I believe this year it was late January, it's usually late January or in February, where each community has their official homeless providers go out and do a count. The problem is when it's February or January, it's very cold.
Right.
And there's a lot of times that you're not gonna get a full count of really what represents the street homeless in your community. So when we see that number, we hear the number 500,000, it's probably a lot more than that.
Oh, I totally agree with you on that, yeah.
Yours is like slightly different because it's a one-time event. So, but I'm going to ask you, because I'm asking everybody, you're confident that you could get this, when on the calendar year would you anticipate doing the event?
We were actually trying to do it in October. And
Okay. Great. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, and this is for you all, and then the VA Stop the Violence, for most everybody that's here, and I hope this is clear, we have the ARPA money, and then when it goes away, it goes away. However, for the two veterans groups, we as a board, as a county, recently there was legislation passed that all counties have to give 0.02% of their EAV to veterans assistance. In our county, for this year, that's $1 million. Now, we're working with the Veterans Affairs Committee, Assistance Committee, in order to figure out how we're going to do that. Let me be clear, we don't have the $1 million. We've just been told we have to start spending it. And so I'm the finance chair, and with my counterpart, Mr. Goss, and Kyle, we've been having like never-ending conversations because we know we got to get to that. And that is the expectation that has been set to us by the state legislature. But one of the things I would like to suggest is I think that we shouldn't be doing this every 10 years. And also for the veteran, the VA Stop the Violence Committee, I think that like, we're gonna wanna, thinking about these two programs in concert with that stream of funding is beyond, what ARPA is, but I think, otherwise we're never gonna be able to give away the $1 million. So like, I think we need to get outside of this, have a conversation with both of your groups. And the person who's sort of spearheading that for this county right now is Michelle, who's sitting there, who's working with our Veterans Affairs Committee and trying to figure out, this new legislation has a lot of rules and parts to it. So the state's attorney's office and Michelle are working on that. So maybe Megan, if you could put me and Michelle and, you know what I mean? Like maybe we could get because I want to have that conversation beyond just the ARPA funding. I think we need to talk to you, the two veterans groups, about how we can implement, how we could bring you into that conversation too, because that's beyond just this funding.
Not to discount any of the homeless, but I just wanted, I guess, to ask for my own knowledge, was that 137, was that all homeless or was that homeless veterans?
They didn't
Or-
specify
Okay,
what they were. They
that's
just said
fine. I was just curious. Not that I would have a problem with this going to all veterans. Or all homeless. I was just curious if that was specifically homeless veterans, or if it was all veterans, or all. I keep misspeaking. All homeless. So okay, that clears that up. Thank you.
Thank you both for coming this evening. I really do support this for the fact of there isn't any VA close to Champaign but Danville. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's the only thing.
VA hospital.
Hospital.
The VA hospital, though. Right, so there's no really VA support around in Champaign County outside of the Legion Post.
There are offices, there are
Are you
offices.
speaking to the microphone?
There's a state office at the National Guard Armory,
Okay,
and then there's a county office here in this building
okay,
Yeah.
that deal with veterans issues as well.
okay. And do you think that you might partner with the American Legion Post 559?
Absolutely.
Well,
mean,
yeah.
Yeah, I'll let you.
Yeah.
Because I think that would be great.
Yeah, I will be I'm a past 19th district commander, and so is my husband, and I will be the incoming 19th district commander. I'm going to do a repeat for the 19th district to help our incoming team.
Okay.
I'm gonna help train them. They need.
I kind of wish your request was more too. I just think 10,000 really won't go a long way, you know.
Well, we're only gonna have a one-day event, because 3-day event is $10,000
Per day.
Yeah, and so the number is small for the county, and I don't know what the budget is for the county, and so and homeless people don't like to be herded in a small space, you know, and so you have to pay for security. $10,000, like, but you know, trying to just budget that money for the venue and the supplies and things like that. Because like for what I budgeted for, like I'm left with $425 now, and I still have to pay for security, and so, yeah.
You could use more, right?
Yeah, and so I wasn't sure what I was allotted because of the violence piece, and even though I'm trying to get the statistics for Champaign County and the violence against homeless people was really interesting, and even just the homeless, just about talking about the homeless and stuff, almost triggered my own issues as being a veteran, and so it's just really sad. And it, you know, when people come to stand downs, it's not just about veterans, it's everybody gets help, you know, so it's veterans and their families in the community, you know.
That's awesome.
Because
I would
veterans
like
are
to
related
see
to
it
everybody.
maybe happen even once each season, you know? I think it's definitely needed in this community. Thank you both.
Any more questions? Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, we have CU Trauma and Resiliency Initiative.
Out of respect, I'm awful if I put a PowerPoint up, so I'm gonna be pretty efficient. So my name is Karen Sims, and I'm with the Trauma and Resiliency Initiative, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm gonna make sure you understand, TRI is funded to be the front end of our local community violence response effort. So when individuals have been impacted by gun violence, those referrals, we respond both at the hospital and in community settings to every incident of gun violence. When the city of Champaign gets a referral, most of those referrals get directed to us for either intensive care coordination or crisis response. So that's our core role. Everybody who comes to us gets a variety of different things. So they get either connected to care, they get some opportunities to have some mental health interventions. So we use this word called skills for psychological recovery. So it's sort of a way of helping people sort of get back on their feet, address their crisis needs. But we also use flexible funds to help people with things like burial cost or moving or relocation. Fortunately or unfortunately, our funding right now comes from the city of Champaign, so it is ARPA for one half of the city, and Urbana and the larger county doesn't get included. We have some piloted funds that allow us to serve a small number of people from Urbana, but if you look at the data and demographics, we have shootings that happen at both Champaign and Urbana and countywide, and what we're hoping to do is to be able to serve the whole county, because there's an inefficiency. Our proposal also includes, in addition to, and I want to explain two other things, in addition to providing that crisis support for the entire county, we also want to be able to do two things. We train and equip people to provide sort of the word is peer-to-peer support. So like, if you think about a recovery coach, we actually train people to walk alongside people as they recover from incidents of gun violence. And those people can walk alongside for their whole length of care. So on average, we have people who work with people from 16 weeks to up to longer than that if they need that. And also those people can provide wraparound supports, and people, the clients that we serve have found that to be invaluable. And if you've heard the word wraparound, it might seem like we're just sort of saying that we look at people holistically, but that isn't how we operate. We actually bring a whole team of people together to walk alongside a family or an individual all the way through their recovery until they get on their feet. And that team does things that are both traditional and non-traditional. I was at a wraparound meeting today, and it's funny that these providers have been working with this family individually, and because we brought the team together, people reached out to their congregation and found someone to cover the cost of applications, because this client needed to find applications. Someone else was able to volunteer to transport this client to a couple of different sites to meet with landlords. And the provider that was charged with sort of the rental assistance had been working with this client for a long time, but in the meeting, reached out to her contacts, the landlords that she knew, to make sure that the client could get placed. And that's what the Village does, is it does a lot of non-traditional things. It sort of shows up fully, and somehow that public accountability moves the process forward. So that's part one. The other thing that we want to do is that we have trained mental health providers who are able to do therapy for free using evidence-based trauma-specific interventions. And there's some gold standards that we just don't have people of color trained in, but we've been able to train people who are either of color or who are really good at working with people of color in evidence-based trauma-specific treatments. And in Urbana, that we would be allowed to provide 600 hours of free, affordable therapy. And our people work with people in office. They can do virtually. They can go to people's homes. They're very, very flexible, but they can give sort of the best practices. So we can screen, assess, and treat. And the treatments that we can offer are ones that are the best for children. So there's something called trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the gold standard. We have a substance abuse treatment model, and if you look at if you think about the intersections between community violence and addictions, they go together. And so we have a gold standard that probation loves and that is really effective at helping people with recovery, that we have people trained in, that we can train more people in. And we also have a suicide screening and assessment tool that's also really good at helping people identify not only suicidal ideation, but homicidal thoughts too, that allows us to intervene early. And again, right now, we can do all of that good stuff in Champaign, Urbana, and the larger county. So again, we had the shooting in Rantoul, and we have some donations that allows to help a little bit, but not in a way that's comprehensive or as robust as our work in Champaign County. Trying to think of what else I wanted to do the greatest hit. So that is what TRI does. Last year, our funding became official in June, and we had 59 individual referrals representing about 174 people. And each of those people, get some level of care. So we take a village. So if it's just you and your partner, we provide services to the whole village. If it's you, your grandma, and your partner, we do that. And we collaborate with every single person who will collaborate with us, because we don't work in silos. If there's already a funding source for something, we don't repeat that. And this will allow us to have somebody who's just completely allocated to the county to expand our capacity to sort of really, really meet more needs and to be a little bit deeper, and also to train a group of people in Urbana to be a part of our response. Urbana and the county, sorry. We have some ideas about Rantoul and Thomasboro, so.
Questions? Dan?
It's my lucky day, I guess. As I'm looking over your proposal with the funds included, it looks like it's basically year one. So of course, once again, the sustainability of the program. And then also, as I look at this, most of it has to do with the support personnel and things of that nature. Only 13,005 approximately for emergency housing. So I know there are other things that come along with that have to be in there besides the support personnel issues.
So
And I
what I-
didn't know how those were being covered.
Great. So what we do is, again, try to leverage other resources. So we do that. We do have some donations that we hope to continue to acquire. And we know that other people in their grants have asked for things that we always we're a good beggar. And so we're always sort of asking for people to leverage those resources that are available. And so like if we can work with the hotel to give us discounts, if we can negotiate down the cost of funeral cost, if we can help people with GoFundMes, if we can work with the church to donate equipment, if we can beg first followers to help us move somebody, we do it all.
And just kind of add what Karen said. I mean, it's very confusing out there for people who don't work full-time in social services, all sorts of acronyms and organizations. I can say from my day job, I've worked with Karen on trying to circle around somebody, and we had somebody who was in a hotel, and they could not tell us who was paying for that hotel because there had been so many different agencies that they had been interfacing with. Jenny?
I can't believe, is this right? You've only been around for 4 years? Because I feel like I've been seeing you do this work for so much longer now. But I'm also someone who, through other volunteer efforts that I do in town, have heard Karen and CU Tries call for assistance. They are definitely very effective at rallying community troops, and to be able to fund them through some of this ARPA funding, I think would take a lot of the load off, but I don't think it would change the work you do, whether you get it or not. I definitely would support some sort of funding to alleviate that load and hopefully allow you to maybe even expand other services that you can offer. So thank you for presenting.
I had the opportunity to see you at work. We had a couple of shootings in my neighborhood, and the city put together an event. I don't know how many people were there. A lot. The room was packed out. The bottom of the library was packed out. And you were one of the people that was helping lead that conversation, a conversation that brought, elected officials, law enforcement, community members that had been impacted by the violence. So I saw firsthand the role that you could play, and I was really impressed. So I'm really excited to see your proposal, and I appreciate the work that you're doing in our community. And I also want to point out, I really do think that one of the things we've wanted to do with this ARPA money is think how we could work with the cities in terms of like leveraging. And it's, I kind of am excited about the fact that Champaign came first and gave some funding towards this effort, but the ability to expand this out, the violence doesn't just happen in Champaign. It happens in other places in our community and in our county. And just frankly, this committee hasn't seen a lot of proposals that really do address the whole county. And so I'm excited to, that to me is a piece of your proposal that's super attractive. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
And I've saw the wonderful work you've done in this community. I've also referred people to speak with you. When the funds were dispersed to the county, that was one thing that I mentioned to our Democratic caucus is with so much life being lost in our community and the struggles that come along with burying loved ones, and then also the family that's left behind, and you just touch all four corners of everything that's going on right now. So I definitely appreciate you being in our community and doing this great work. I would definitely support this. Thank you.
Can I answer the sustainability question? So, and this is a little bit different. So, one of the reasons why we have been deep in trying to train people is because we believe, right, that if we can have people in neighborhoods and on blocks who can continue to offer services, you know, peer to peer, family to family, we just sort of offset it now. So, part one, we believe that there's a sustainability piece around the how we're doing it. And then the therapy, the reason why we are asking you to invest in getting therapists trained is that we have an agreement that they will offer some pro bono services when they're done in exchange for the training, and eventually go into private practice or offset this and also make a commitment to stay around and invest in the community. So for us, we see this as really like planting seeds, not necessarily investing in try, but really investing in the people in the community so that they can continue to do the work long after, you know, we're here.
Samantha?
Honestly, this should be a permanent program that the RPC should offer. I mean, with gun violence just being in our community, just a suggestion that, I mean, there should always be something that someone should be able to reach out to in their time of need when they experience gun violence.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. Next, we have Cunningham Township Bridge to Home Program.
I sent my PowerPoint in. I can also just, it's on the desktop. Aha, that's great. Thank you so much. So I brought like 3 methods of technology to do this presentation, just in case. Okay. And to do, let me hit, I don't know. Tell me the magic button to start. On slideshow? Yeah, thank you. I use Macs. Okay, I'm a Mac person. Okay, good evening. My name is Danielle Chenoweth. I'm the Cunningham Township Supervisor, and I'm here to talk about our proposal to the county board for ARPA dollars to support Bridge to Home. The work that we do bridges 2 different categories that you're funding. One is housing services, and the other is public safety and addressing community violence. I presented to the board, I think it was August of 2022, around housing challenges. I'm going to be really brief and then go and spend most of the time on the proposal. So these numbers are updated as of 2022. Income is not kept up with rents. A full-time worker must make at least $16.69 an hour to avoid housing burden in our county. And to make essentially monthly rent that is one of the lowest rents that we see at township, you have to work 60 hours at a minimum wage. And that is for a 2-bedroom apartment. Residents face rent burden, evictions, and risk of homelessness in our communities. So 6 out of 10 renters in our county are rent burdened higher than the national average, which is pretty terrible. It's 5 out of 10. 40% of calls, all the calls for help to 211 are related to housing insecurity, and family homelessness is steadily rising. So I gave 2018 and 2020 numbers so you could see. Then I also looked, we've had a program at Cunningham Township where we have a caseworker in the schools who works directly with families And we have worked with 75 homeless families, including 197 children in this past year. So we had it pretty tough last September. 12 families in the county were sleeping in cars or unsheltered and were on wait lists with Emergency Family Shelter and our Emergency Family Shelter. That was this last year. So it's worse when school starts. That's when we tend to see the layoffs and the evictions to make room for students in August and September. The supply of affordable and subsidized housing does not meet the demand in our community. About 1 in 5 households who need a rental, who have need a housing voucher, can actually access them. I found it interesting in our research that the number of people on disability, SSI in particular, which is for the very low income, increased by 21.2% in the county between 2008 and 2018. So for those who are unaware, so we have about 3,200 disabled residents in Champaign County. They live on SSI. They receive $940 a month. They're supposed to, with that money, pay for rent, utilities, food, and incidentals. And so to achieve housing stability, they would need to pay about $250 to $300 per month in rent. Raise your hand if you know an apartment in the county that is where you can live independently at that rate. Yeah, I thought so. Okay, so the risks, I want to focus on our target population. I know that there's been a lot of very needed and welcome additions to homeless services in Champaign County. Our office has helped to spearhead and support a lot of those initiatives. There are gaps in our community, and the proposal before you really focuses on those gaps. In particular, our program focuses on our Bridge to Home program for homeless services, focuses on homeless women, children, and vulnerable people who are vulnerable to attack in congregate shelter, particularly LGBTQ residents and survivors of sexual violence. Wanted to share a few statistics, both local and national. So as you probably know, intimate partner violence is the leading cause of women's homelessness. And 92% of homeless women experience severe physical or sexual assault in their lifetimes. It's unfortunate women experience this to such a great degree. If we look at transgendered residents who are homeless, they experience sexual and physical assault actually more often than women. And in our office, I would say transgendered residents are the people who report the most severe physical and sexual violence of anyone that we have worked with. I also want to point out that there's a kind of a racial aspect to homelessness for Black survivors of sexual violence, as 76% attribute their rape to risky living situations. So when we talk about keeping people safe, the most important thing we can do to keep people safe is that they have safe housing. It is the number one thing that helps to protect people from violence. 35 to 50% of all homeless youth identify as LGBTQ, and those homeless youth are 7 times more likely to be victims of a crime than their heterosexual homeless youth. Sorry to bring the bad stats up, but this is what we're facing. We did a study, it's a bit out of date, and I want to do an updated study, but when we first started our homeless assistance program, we looked at the 62 homeless mothers we had served to that date, because we were seeing a lot of mothers who were young mothers with older children. So I started looking at their birth dates and their conception dates going back 9 months from the birth dates of children. And what we found is that 42% of the mothers we serve conceived a child as a teenager. 11 conceived a child under the age of consent. That means they were legally raped. 10% conceived a child while they were 15 years or younger. We had one of the 62 who conceived her first child when she was 12 years old. The county rate of conception, which I pulled from public health, under the age of consent is less than 0.1%. So it's a very serious situation, and our focus at Cunningham Township, the kind of lane that we have worked to occupy because it isn't being filled in other spaces, is really looking at vulnerable populations, amongst the homeless and providing safe and supportive housing. Oh, shoot. Okay. So I have circled the two components. I don't know what happened to my formatting, but I've circled the two components that we're asking for support for. This is all the Bridge to Home components, but essentially we currently have 8 units of shelter for families. We have 4 units in hotels, and we would like to make that bricks and mortar and expand that if possible. So my ideal would be 6 to 8 units. And that would allow us to provide transitional housing. This is what Champaign has with emergency family housing into Maple Grove that I believe you funded with ARPA dollars. And I appreciate that because we very much support that program and work very closely with them. This would be the component in Urbana. So here are successes. I will share the PowerPoint with you, but essentially we have had very significant success with a program that's we started this program during COVID. The only piece that existed before the pandemic was rental assistance. In particular, I'll point out with emergency housing, we've supported 41 individuals with disabilities and 76 families housed, including 131 children. This is Destiny. She was 29 years old, a mother of 6, and she lost her job early in the pandemic. It's actually a staff member at housing authorities saw her and her children sleeping in her car and referred her to township. After 2 months in our emergency housing, she had a job at the local hospital, and she moved to her home with a voucher in West Champaign. She's very happy. Situation, and she is stably housed according to a review of our participants. This is our housing process. Essentially, you can see we are both in the streets and the schools, and there's a lot of different tools. We employ all options available. The tools that you would be funding are the emergency housing and transitional housing components. You would not be the only funder. It would be partner funding. Our request is facilities acquisition and renovation. We would really like to not use hotels. They're very expensive. We have 8 units. We'd like to move our 4 units into hotels and expand that for at least 6, if not 8 units for acquisition. And then we need to make accessibility and energy efficiency improvements. I won't go through the budget sources, but I want to let you know these are really very actual and hard dollars. And we do intend, our plan is to spend everything down by the end of 2024. We have property management, supportive services staff, and this would be bridge funding that would provide support during grants application process. We have 1 grant that supports the staff, and then our tax levy supports the staff. We would like to add another FTE, and I have 3 different targets for where to get those funds, but I'll need this time frame to secure those from the state. We're asking for $40,000 in supportive services through partner agencies. This would be pass-through money for specialty skills that we can't provide. They're really better provided by RACES, Courage Connections, CU Try, mentorship, language translation, et cetera, immigrant services, and legal support. And then the direct assistance piece, it's $90,000. I just want to point out that our internal budget is that $75,000 of that would be for utility assistance. We are being slammed in Urbana with the high utility rates, the huge hike in utilities. Champaign's about to get it. So we know that this is going to be a need. We always send people to LIHEAP and Salvation Army first. Our program is when they can't be served by those 2 programs. They're either closed, they've already been served, they don't qualify. So just know that's we augment and work very closely with RPC and Salvation Army. Our total budget request is 882. And like I said, the biggest piece of that is for the facilities acquisition. We are actually looking at an apartment building Wednesday, and we have 2 other prospects. I've invited your county executive to join us, or anyone from the office. We're happy to have you tour the spaces that we're looking at as the funder. These are our collaborators, and they're not soft collaborators, they're hard collaborators, meaning we have letters of support MOUs or contracts with every single collaborator listed here. So we have a really tight system of service provision. We are a member, we are a coordinated entry point for the homeless, and I serve on the executive committee of the continuum of service providers to the homeless. So we do everything in partnership. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and thank you for the few extra minutes.
Samantha?
You don't bring bad news. I think you wake us up with those numbers.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's terrible.
Yeah, and I thank you too for the work that you do in our community. So you're actually looking for a building, a brick and mortar building?
Correct.
That would be awesome.
And this has been our plan for a while, and we've been waiting for the ARPA funds so that we could make this request. We were hoping things would move faster in Urbana than they did. We went ahead and bought our first building out of our tax levy dollars with the increase through the referendum. But we weren't able to expand to the level that we were hoping. Urbana has funded us, so I appreciate that. They're funding different programs, particularly our rental assistance, which has gone through the roof with the loss of the COVID rental assistance. So they've definitely been a partner at the table.
Thank you.
Sorry, you just said you have already purchased one?
We
building?
purchased one building, which we put in service in August of 2021. We purchased 2 buildings in downtown Urbana and put those in service for emergency families. And the stats that I pulled from are from that program that we've been running.
So I think you answered my question before. Yeah.
So essentially what we're seeing, and I'm glad that we've had some time to look at the numbers, what we're seeing is that we believe that if we can get to about 12 to 18 units, we will eliminate families sleeping in cars and in unsafe conditions. So basically the literally homeless amongst families in Urbana, we will eliminate. We're very close to that. One of the things that we're seeing is families that need some additional time. In Champaign, when they stay at emergency family shelter, those families that need additional time are tracked to Maple Grove. In Urbana, we don't have a similar situation. We only have our emergency housing. So your support would really allow us to have a similar program to Maple Grove where we have a transitional housing support. The only difference is we wouldn't displace the families. We just have a stash of units, and after 3 months, they transition to transitional housing. So essentially, the case management will look a little bit different. We'll do 3 months of emergency housing, and then those who need, that's the average stay. So most families are going to move out by then, but those who need additional support, I would say immigrant families, families with disabled head of household, and families with young mothers, young parents, typically need a longer time frame to become stabilized.
Excuse me, I see Cunningham Township as the lead agency for this, but are there other areas within the community that this would help besides those within Cunningham Township?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, our request, I just want to be clear. I'm just looking at the budget again. Okay, so acquisition would be in Urbana. The way we operate now is we prioritize Urbana families because we're working in Urbana schools, but we coordinate with Emergency Family Shelter. So Emergency Family Shelter is funded to be a countywide program, but in essence, it operates as a Champaign program. But if they have families, so if they have families from Urbana, they oftentimes send them to us. If we have families from Champaign, we send them to them. The reason why we do that is because those families are closer to their schools then, so it's easier for the kids to get to school. But if, for example, we have an opening in our shelter and they have a Champaign family waiting, we take that family. Same thing with them. If we have an Urbana family and they have an Urbana family and they have an opening, they take that family. So essentially, we operate as a county program. We just prioritize Urbana families, just like ESF prioritizes Champaign. For all the other pieces, other than the property acquisition, those would be countywide. So that includes utility assistance support during the time of the ARPA and the direct assistance. With this funding, we would support the county.
Then if I hear you correctly, this also would involve the rural environment.
Correct.
And they could apply for some of-
Absolutely.
Okay.
And actually, our utility assistance program, the only reason we recently reduced it to only Urbana is because of a lack of funds. We were running a countywide program during all of the pandemic. We had quite a few requests from Rantoul in
I
particular.
was gonna say, I know our township
Yes, so Rantoul
really got hit hard.
Rantoul got hit hard. I got to know Rantoul because they have a municipal utility. So I was on the phone with them, brokering, making sure people didn't get cut off from utilities, making sure our payment got through in time and that they had continuity of service. So we would go back to having that program during this time frame. And honestly, if we continue to have utility support funding, I'd be happy to continue it, with other funding countywide.
This is maybe more of a comment than a question. I am very attracted to bricks and mortar projects with this ARPA money because then it expands beyond the lifespan of ARPA. I mean, I'm not against the programmatic piece. I think that's important, but the sustainability is a difficult question. And then also the continued impact of bricks and mortar will live long beyond the lifespan of, we've done quite a bit of housing, but we by no means have solved it yet. So the bricks and mortar piece to me is very attractive.
Yeah, and if I could just comment, I would ask if you fund the bricks and mortar and the property management, obviously, that comes with that, please also support the bridge funding for staff, because I can't have a building without staff, and I do have plans to be able to support that staff after the time. If there was a place, obviously, I'd like to ask for the whole enchilada. If there's a place for cutting, it probably would be around the support services through partner agencies, and then next we would cut the utility assistance that we could give to the county residents. That's kind of in terms of our order of priorities, so to speak.
I really appreciate you framing it that way. And I find it very helpful if like others too, if there's something within, because we're working with such a limited budget within your own request, if there's a way you let us know, like this is what we consider absolutely essential. This is where we could maybe cut. That's helpful for my brain, so thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, anybody else? All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Next is the East Central Illinois Building Trades.
I don't have an overhead, I have some papers. All right, my name's Kevin Sage. I'm the president of the East Central Illinois Building Trades and Construction Trades Council. We are based in Champaign. We have part of Piatt County and Ford County, and we just now have merged with the Danville Building Trades. So we also do part of Danville. But what I want to talk to you guys about today is good jobs. So one way to make Champaign County a better place, to stop some of the violence that's happening, I believe, are good paying jobs. You get people good paying jobs, health care, pensions, and I think that makes a lot of problems disappear. What we want to do as a building trades is start an apprenticeship readiness program. What we're looking at is getting together a cohort of about 12 people. We'd like to focus on disadvantaged areas of the county. We would have an instructor teaching different skills to be able to get into an apprenticeship. The building trades, we all have training directors, training funds. What we would do is have our training funds come and spend time with this cohort. They would come and do hands-on projects, talk to the cohort about different ways that they can improve themselves and improve their resumes. We would do mock interviews, just preparing people to get into an apprenticeship. I think that there's a lot of different programs out there that try to do that without having the actual experience of being in a trade union and having the training directors and the people that are actually doing the training and the acceptance procedures being involved. I think that it would go a lot further if you have those people actually doing the training, and there would actually be curriculum from our apprenticeships being put into these classes. Also, part of that would be a committee, kind of an advisory, I guess, committee. We would like to have people from the community be part of that. You know, as a building trades, I feel like we've done a very poor job of recruiting people, especially in certain neighborhoods. I think that if we had community involvement and people helping us get to the right places and get to the right people, I think we can change that. And I think this is something that, you know, not only does it change the life of one person getting a good paying job and being able to have health care and provide for themselves, this is something that changes the lives of their kids and changes the lives of their grandkids. It's a generational change. So that's what we're looking to do. I gave you some handouts that gives a little bit more information. There's a budget that we have that I handed out to you, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Well, the trades are near and dear to my family, I can tell you that, because that's what my husband does.
Oh, good.
But one of the things that I think is really important, that the schools used to do this.
Yes.
And they used to have a program where the kids would get out part of the day and go work somewhere. And so one of the things I'm wondering is this something that could be done in collaboration with some of the schools, having the kids come out and maybe even getting some credit for and learning that way? Because there's a huge shortage of the trades. And I think once they have these abilities, yeah, it's a lifelong process, but it also gives them some pride in something that they've done on their own, which can also prevent a lot of idle things that happen when you're not busy with stuff. But I'm wondering what the collaboration maybe with some of the schools are and getting the kids out or even going into the classroom with some of the.
Right. So we put this proposal together quite a while ago. Since then, we've actually, as building trades, we have sponsored a class at Parkland, and it's for all the kids, high school students that are in Parkland's district, and it's an ECCA class. So these high school kids, they get college credit and high school credit, and it's based on roughly kind of the same as what we've got here. Each trade goes in and spends a couple weeks with the kids. There's an actual instructor with them, but then we go in and we do hands-on things. We do visits out to job sites. They do visits to different training schools. Like I said, there's a lot of hands-on with them. They get an OSHA certification out of it. We're actually, this morning I was doing mock interviews with the high school students. But it's roughly the same thing as what we're doing here. Right here, we're looking for people that are out of high school. It's good to have the high school students go through these classes and learn about us a little bit. a lot of those students, they don't know where they're going to go or what they're doing at the end of it all. I feel like with a program like this, we're looking for people that are motivated to be in the trades, that want to be in the trades, but don't know what the path is, don't know where to go, don't know how to do it.
So this is my world. This is like what I do kind of for a living, is think about things like this. Specifically, I definitely think our community is underserved in pre-apprenticeship programs. If you look at what we should have for a community, the density of a community of our size, we do have also the highway construction and program that I'm really familiar with because I sometimes teach in it and I'm on the board of it over at Parkland. And Elise Duty Jones, who runs that program, she's getting people placed. I mean, she's gotten dozens of people placed, both within the trades and, good paying jobs at U of I. It's a really similar model to this. And so one of the things I'd want to make sure, it is very focused though, specifically on a lot of folks go into the laborers and
Laborers to operators.
right, and the operators, because it's a state program that's highway money. So the trades that work on highways kind of get the priority. We also have here in town the Youth Build program, which I think is phenomenal, but it's kind of like those folks, I don't want to say they fall off a cliff. They get all these skills, but we need them to then be connected to a program that gets them. So I feel like figuring out how you coordinate with that program you just described, the Parkland program for the highway construction engineers, the schools, and I definitely think that this is needed. Like, for example, I don't think we have a welding pre-apprenticeship program in this town. And that could be a game changer. If you have that welding experience, there's multiple trades that you could go into. I don't think we have a pre-apprenticeship program in this town that specifically works with the electricians particularly well. So how do you anticipate trying to figure out how you fit your program into that broader landscape to make sure you're not duplicating services? Is that part of one of the things that you've been thinking about?
Yeah, so actually I talked with Ms. Walton this week about this, and what we were talking about was through the Youth Build, they have students or a cohort, and she was talking about how they're hiring somebody, I believe she was saying, to actually teach construction side of it, and we're going to help with her with that. But what we're looking at are the ones that get through Youth Build, and for her to identify these are the people that you need to get into your program, and then we take them and do, instead of this big of a training, we're narrowing it down just to, like you said, a welding class, or you're going to do an electrical class, you're going to do, a sheet metal class. And so it's taking that broad training and narrowing it down to how do I get into this apprenticeship.
Two other things. I actually think the county has a really important role to play here, because one of the existing program at Parkland, one of the biggest challenges that they have is getting enrollees. And again, like, that program is getting people jobs. Like, you go through that program, that program is getting people good paying jobs with pensions and health care, jobs that are careers. And so I think thinking how we get CU Tri and Dream and First Followers and the townships to be feeders, I think we need to be thinking about how we're funding the entire scale, right? From your family experienced community violence to how do we get you a good job? Your family is currently homeless. How do we get you a good job? And we need to think about that. And I think maybe the county could help. I don't know, I almost feel like we need to get all these groups that we've been funding in a room together and figuring out how there's disconnects, right? And how do we bridge those disconnects, I think, is really important. Because, every semester, because that program is a semester by semester, there are empty slots in the Parkland program. And it's a shame, because if people were enrolling that program, I have confidence that they would be, and I have confidence in this program too. But my other question for you is your question: what do you do after this funding ends?
Well, I tell you, I've been having discussions with contractor associations because not only does this help the community, it's helping our contractors out too. It's getting them a pool of people that are getting some training and coming up that can get into the apprenticeships and help them do their projects. So I'm in discussions with a couple different of the contractor groups, and they're very interested in helping fund something like this also. And I think there's maybe some other grant money maybe out that we haven't really tapped into yet. I'm trying to find with like our national building trades and that sort of thing. But I think that if we can get this off the ground and get started and can show results, that makes it a lot more attractive for other places to want to invest in it.
I also think, I mean, let's just be frank, the building trades traditionally have not been a space that has always been accepting to people of color and to women. And I know that this is something that East Central Illinois Building Trades has been thinking a lot about. But I also think as a county, I think that local governments, we need to be doing carrot and stick with this. And to me, the stick is we put together we have $40 million of construction out on the street, and we put together project labor agreements that are like, we expect certain goals in terms of diversity on these jobs. And I think that's something that we as a county have done. I think it's something that Urbana needs to do. I think it's something that Champaign needs to do. But I also think if we're going to put that stick out there, we also have to have the carrot piece where we're developing that work. We are putting resources to developing that workforce to make that a reality. And I think local governments could play a really important role in that, and just frankly have been absent. We haven't put out if we don't put out the expectation that the things we build will have a diverse workforce, then how dare we say we're shocked when it doesn't, right? And I think the county has taken some important steps forward, but we need to work with our other local governments because, just to be blunt, they build a lot more than we do. I mean, this $40 million is the most we've built in a long time. I don't know, they're building a lot more, and we need to get them on board as well, because if we're going to shift this, sort of culture in our county, it's going to take a lot of partners, and the county can't do it by themselves.
Samantha?
Thank you. So I see here you say you will hold biannual informational sessions focusing on communities of color, maybe the Douglas Center, to discuss how to apply to trade unions and eligibility requirements for each local union apprenticeship. So the first thing that comes to mind is I'm wondering about your policy pertaining to community members with felony convictions.
I don't think there's any trade that keeps people out because of a felony. I know we have people that have felonies. The only issue is that there's certain projects that don't allow people onto their job. If you go to a nuclear facility, if you have a felony, you just can't get on. Even if you have a DUI, you can't get onto the job. So it's the trade unions. They'll accept you. We'll bring you in. It's just that there's certain projects you can't be on.
So with the trade, and I don't know too much about trades, but I do promote trades for community members that do have felony convictions, because they're not hireable, traditionally, but if they have a trade, they are more, able to make a life for themselves. But the question that I was going to ask, so have you ever partnership with Douglas Center before in the past?
Yeah, we actually did. Miss Ammons, she got us set up to do a little trade fair there one time, and the idea was to keep going. And I don't know, we didn't connect again. But yeah, we have done it there before.
Mm-hmm. And with the trades, do you get a certificate or a state license?
Well, when you finish the apprenticeship, you'll get a Department of Labor certificate saying that you finished, that you're a journey person. Now there's licenses that go with that. Like I'm with the plumbers and pipe fitters, so I have a plumbing license. I have a medical gas license, so I can work in hospitals on medical gas, when they do surgeries and stuff. So there's certain licensing requirements that you have to meet to be in certain trades, but that doesn't, to get through the apprenticeship, you don't have to have those licenses. You get a certificate when you're done with the apprenticeship.
Okay, because you partnered with the Housing Authority as well?
I'm working on it.
You're working on that?
Yes.
And
yes.
so-
We've talked several times, yeah.
Okay, and I know something that I was just thinking about with the Housing Authority, with some of our youth having felony convictions, to put them through that training and then them not being employable, is such a shame. So I would hope that you would clearly look at those policies pertaining to felony convictions,
Yeah,
just so
absolutely.
that everyone would be entitled to a fair chance.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else? All right, thanks a lot.
Well, I want to thank you all for your time and letting me speak to you a little bit. Thank you.
All right, next we have the H3 Coalition.
All right, so good evening, everybody. I want to thank you all for allowing me a space to come and talk to you a little bit about what H3 is and what we've done and what our ask is for the upcoming fiscal year. My name is Marlon Mitchell, and I'm representing H3, which stands for Harm, Healing, Hope, as you look over your shoulders in front of you at the slides. So we actually signed a contract. We were one of the awardees, the first phase of ARPA funds last year, fiscal year 22, or program year of 2022. And so the next few slides, I just want to talk a little bit about some of the deliverables that we've accomplished. We signed the contract in December, and we started way before December. Actually, we've been having this conversation about community violence dating back to 2020. And so just a little bit of historical piece about that is that once we learned that with the ARPA funds that were going to be rolled out by the Biden administration in January 2020, we started to kind of envision what can we use, how can we use some of the funds here in Champaign County for the uptick in gun violence that we've all been experiencing. And so officially we started December 22 with the first round of funding. So we just want to talk about those deliverables. So deliverables accomplished. So we rolled this out in phases. So this phase here, the integration and development phase. So we talked about some of the things that we were doing to bring together a coalition of organizations, most of them community-based organizations or small businesses. So as we started to garner enough support, we started signing solid MOUs with organizations or businesses to support us in this effort. So to date, we have 8 signed MOUs that we've had since about a year, 12 months in. And then we have a couple letters of support that have been signed by the local NAACP. And then I think the second one is a professor at the University of Illinois who's supporting our work. And so as we started to develop this, one of the things that we talk about, and this is very important as far as sustainability and with the evaluation component. So as a committee, we designed a data collection system where anything that we wanted to do or that we were doing in the community, we were making sure that we were documenting all those different instances of activities and different things that we were having. All right, so that was the first organizing committee, and that dissolved, I think maybe about a year ago, and it was turned over to leadership. And so the Leadership Council consists of the 8 MOUs, the leads of those particular organizations, so we all came around the table. And so since November, December, I do believe, we've been meeting as a group weekly just to discuss on and envisioning what does this look like, right? How do we plan this out as a coalition? What does that governing body look like? What are some of the decision-making policies or processes? And so we've been meeting since, like I said, December and early, I guess it's December, maybe late November. So initially, we had 5 different pillars of our work, but over the discussions that we started to find that there was a lot of cross-threading and overlap in some of the work, so we went from 5 pillars and we reduced those to 3 pillars. And so as a leadership council, one of the things that we want to do, although First Followers is the fiscal sponsor for the first wave of funding, in our strategic plan, which we planned out for 3 entire years, dating back to 22, 23, 24. So one of the things we wanted to do, since First Followers is a fiscal sponsor for this or the current funding, we wanted to make sure that H3 began to move towards its own standalone entity, right? So we've secured the FEIN number. We have our not-for-profit paperwork submitted to the federal government, so we're awaiting approval from that. And again, going back to the governing structure, as we meet, we talk about how this H3 should be governed and what the decision-making process is going to be set. And so we've set a date of about a month from now to have all of that completed. Okay, some more deliverables accomplished. So these are the activities that we've done. All right, so these activities date back to last year. And I get to the point, like I said, we've been looking at this for quite some time. So it's not just one of those things we rolled out in 2022 and 23. So in the summer of last year, we wanted to figure out or get a feel or get the climate of what was the community experiencing and what did they feel about community gun violence or community violence in particular. And so we went to Champaign-Urbana Days, and we, a team of my folks and others went out and we passed out surveys. We got 275 different responses, and we have just published a report maybe about a month ago on all those findings. Right, so we consider that as one of the H3 activities because we wanted to start there so that it wouldn't be one of those things that, you know, you can read literature, you can read research papers and different things like that, get an understanding about the root causes of violence, but in particular what is happening here in Champaign County. So that's one of the first steps that we made to have a participatory action research conducted. All right, so in September, I do believe it was, we had an H3 kickoff meeting where we had right about 100 attendees. We invited out local media. You all may have seen some of that on WCIA and some of the newspapers. We also invited State Rep Carol Ammons out because she has a passion for the work that has been done or that we're doing or we're trying to do here in Champaign. We had both Champaign and Urbana City Council members who came out and supported just to listen about what the initiative is. Then, of course, we had City of Champaign staff, and then a few U of I professors came out to support as well and learn a little bit more about it. So the implementation phase, these are some of the things that we've accomplished. So over time, there's been over 400 services and activities since January of last year. And as you see these sub-bullet points, those are our 5 pillars: education, civic engagement, economic development, community outreach, counseling, and support. Those were our 5 pillars, and we've combined those down to be 3. So if you look at the numbers in the parentheses afterwards, those are the different or the numbers of occurrences or activities that were all supported in that particular pillar. You can see education had 133. I'll just talk a little bit about each one of them, so that just give you a snapshot of what that looks like. So we have a high school diploma, online high school diploma program tied into this. And to date, we have, since we started doing this of summer last year, I've had like 3 or 4 graduates, I think it might be 4, people who have graduated with their high school diplomas. We also have sent people and partnered with the SWIFT program at Parkland College, where there have been several people that's enrolled in that program. We have a cohort coming up in August, where we'll send 4 or 5 other individuals that's going into those education. And then also, along with the education pillar, we provide tutoring and different supports, learning supports. Civic engagement, so essentially what that is coming out to speak about what our experiences are to local city councils, the county board as well. So we want to make sure that we're doing our duty as far as being citizens and talking about some of the things that we do. but not only talking about from our own lived and personal experiences, but also reaching into other people who may not have that voice or who may not feel comfortable with sharing their stories. So we try to engage the community as best as possible so we can roll up those voices and we can center those people's voices. The economic development pillar. So the economic development pillar is very targeted at small micro businesses or entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs. And so we have what we call Business Academy, where individuals can come with and learn how to put together a business plan, any kind of documents that they need to get certified or recognized by the state, and so on and so forth. So we've had several of those, I think maybe two, maybe 3 6-week workshops over the last year. Community outreach, so that's just being in the community, trying to make ourselves visible and educating people about who we are, not educating, but informing people about who we are and what we do and why we do what we do. And also in partnership with other agencies and organizations to also let them know, inform them of what H3 is. Counseling and support, so this is a very critical component of the H3 model, is because, we all, have heard that term trauma. And so one of the things that we know, and matter of fact, I think I might have read some here recently about the lack of mental health services in Champaign County. I think we're one of the worst counties in the state as far as providing mental health services for individuals. And we all know through community violence, you want to provide spaces for people to heal. You want to make sure people have the necessary tools to heal and get through those circumstances. So in a nutshell, those are some of the things that we've done since January 2022 up to date. All right, so just looking forward for this fiscal year or program year, one of the things that we want and we're going to be intentional in doing is hiring 3 staff for the H3, right? We have an executive director. So we're going to have a plan in place to hire a consultant so that we can find a national search and so we can find the right candidate. But in the meantime, since we've been meeting, it's kind of been that leadership group that has been doing everything, but we want to branch out and decide on an interim director. And so after last week's meeting, we had a candid conversation about who wants to step up around the table to take that position until we find someone to fill the role of a full-time executive director. Program coordinator, again, we're going to a headhunting service or agency or consultant to find someone that's going to fit that role. And then third, administrative assistant, which we have a contractor that has been consulting us with our strategic plan, and she's been handling much of that role of the administrative assistant. So the goal is to transition her out as her contract's in about a month or so, and brings in a temp, because we're exploring a temp agency, or just bringing in someone temporarily until we can get somebody hired for that full-time as well. And as you can see, secure more funding. That's part of our goal for this year. All right, so there's a question about sustainability. All right, so I would like to think that, the sustainability component, of course, is the most important piece, but that's one of the things that we've already started. And what I mean by that, we've already leveraged funding, meaning we were awarded by the county in December of this year, but we had already leveraged funding with the city of Champaign. The city of Champaign has put a lot of money behind community efforts or community gun violence and the efforts of community-based organizations. And so there's several, what they call the blueprint. Champaign is calling it the blueprint partners. And so we're at the table with that. The city of Van just rolled out their ARPA funds. One of the organizations within H3 has been funded by that particular piece. And then we have the ICJA, okay, the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority, which is a state organization that receives funds for the recreational marijuana tax. All right, so already, if you all recall, we had a three-year plan, but we revised that. But part of that plan was a business acquisition for year 2, right? So we've hired an architect firm, and the owner of that firm is actually an architect professor at the University of Illinois. So she has done a precedent study, And so she's reported out to the H3 leadership team about what that looks like, what other people are doing in the space of a one-stop shop here across the country. And then we also are working in close lock and step with the City of Champaign's planning department, trying to find a brick and mortar. We've identified two locations, and upcoming we're going to coordinate our schedule so we can go out and visit those 2 locations. And then again, exploring other grant opportunities. ICEJA, we have several H3 or a couple H3 members who have already partnered with ICEJA or received funds from ICEJA. And the Illinois Department of Human Services is doing a lot around community violence efforts. And then the Bureau of Justice, which is a national organization that does things as well as far as community-based violence solutions or community solutions to violence. Any questions for me?
I had just one question for a point of clarity. On your budget, you had for, I know we are currently, you're in the middle of a $500,000, we've given this program $500,000. So on your budget, is the 1.59 in addition to that $500,000 that you've already received? Or is program year 2023 the $500,000 that you're currently spending down? That was the one piece I wasn't clear on.
All right, so the 1.5 is in total. That's for the 2 years.
Okay.
So the request for this year is the 1.09.
Okay, got you. I wasn't sure about that, so that was one of the questions I had. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
So it's just breaking it out over the 2 phases.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
All right, any other questions?
So you can reduce on your yellow chart, you can reduce on the yellow chart that down to the request so that, yeah.
Real quick, a big part of this, I think I thought I saw like around 400,000 for the building, but the rest of it is more operational. And so if we're funding year 1 and year 2, what happens in year 3?
So let me make sure I'm
Well,
understanding.
2023, we've given money for that, to fund that. 2024, you're looking for a building, which is about 400,000, but then 2025.
So we're
That's
only
a big
asking.
chunk of money, so I want to make sure that,
Okay, so the way I read it is, the way I understand the ARPA funds is that you have to have everything committed as a county by 2024.
right.
Right. So 2025, we're not looking at 2025. We're looking for 2025 to secure funds outside of what the county has right now.
Oh, gosh, I got this backwards here on this little thing. Okay. So basically, you're going to raise $1 million in funds for 2025.
No. So, all right. So the $500,000 right now is supposed to be spent down. We were
Right.
rewarded last December 2022.
Yes, sir.
That would be our plans to spend that down by the end of this year. And the 1.909 is for 2024.
Correct, but what happens in 2025 when you don't have the 1.09 or the, let's see, 600,000 because 400 was for the building? I'm looking for some sustainability. That's a
Okay.
big number to take into 2025, and I wonder if you'd already had plans for keeping this project going, because a lot of that was your consulting and helping people.
Right. So I guess my question to the county would be, is my understanding correct when the ARPA funds must be committed by the end of 2024?
What I'm asking is, what do you do after 2024 when we
So
don't have
that's-
ARPA funds?
Okay, all right. So that's kind of the sustainability piece that we put in there. So what we're speaking towards is that, the city of Champaign has already funded some projects of last year. So the idea is to build a model, right? With a lot of, and that's why we've been collecting data so that we can really take a step back to see what we've done over the last 2 years and to try to leverage those funds from the state, federal governments, to see, what are the outcomes that we're starting to see over 2 years. And I'd also like to point out that the collaboration, right? Because we always talk about intergovernmental collaborations. And so there's several organizations within H3 that have had funds from the city of Champaign, the city of Urbana, and then the county as well. So our thoughts behind that is that once you can see an intergovernmental, most funders, when they look at it, they want to see these partnerships. How are they spending their money? Are they spending all the money themselves, or are other governments coming to the table for a common issue, right? So that's kind of how we're looking at our sustainability plan, because we've already secured the city of Champaign money for certain things. Even to date, when in the slide, if you looked at it, we talked about the brick and mortar piece, right? So we're specifically reaching into the city of Champaign to help us with some guidance in finding that, right? And so we're hoping that they will put some money behind whatever the county, if the county gives us money for that, so that there will be a true collaboration. And so I know on a federal level, on a national level, oftentimes the federal government wants to see who's the partners around the table and what kind of relationships do you have with those entities that are around the table before they can even consider opening their checkbooks, right? So that's kind of how we're approaching 2025.
Jenny?
Just to start off, over 400 services and activities supported is a astounding number when you're still in getting off the ground phase. So I commend you for that. But my question was, and I don't remember what the number was offhand, the groups that you had, the agreements that you were working on, the ones that you were working with last year, are there any additional, are there changes from like?
So we've had a couple organizations that have have not committed. All right, so there's some changes there, but then there's other organizations who are wanting to get into H3. But since we started this conversation, one of the things that we were intentional on is, okay, who's around the table right now? We're going to keep them around the table, or try to keep them around the table. We didn't want to bring anybody in to kind of convolute the conversations, because we had already put maybe about 8 to 12 months into that. And so the idea is, once we get the governing structure and the process and the procedures in place of decision making, then we're going to bring on, or we're going to welcome other organizations to come and be a part.
All right. Anybody else? All right, thanks a lot, Marlon.
All right, thank you.
Next, we have the Muhammad Area Youth Club.
Hello, board. My name is Brianna Buchanan, and I'm the new executive director at Muhammad Area Youth Club. I will be pretty quick. So just a little bit about Macy. The Muhammad Area Youth Club is a not-for-profit youth club that serves members ages 6 to 18 and their families. We work to improve attendance, grades, behavior, and school engagement. These indicators have been proven to enhance high school graduation rates, improve engagement in the community, decrease interactions with law enforcement, and generate long-term successes. And we are teaching and supporting youth to develop to their fullest potential to become responsible, respectful, caring, and productive citizens. In order to best continue our mission statements at Macy, we recognize that we need to expand programming as our community expands. The Muhammad Area Youth Club would like to establish a new after-school program, which would be 1st through 9th grade, called Macy After the Bell. There is a growing need for affordable, safe, professional, and supportive childcare in the Muhammad community. Working parents need affordable and safe childcare. Currently, there are existing programs, but they are not accessible to everyone, resulting in children left unattended at home and in care of siblings roaming around town. And Muhammad Area Youth Club After the Bell would fill that need. In the last calendar year, approximately 62% of the Macy memberships were new students, and we anticipate this positive trend to continue. Our current after-school program is for 6th through 9th grade. It's held at the Muhammad Area Youth Club Center. That leaves K through 5th grade to make other arrangements. We get daily phone calls asking if we have after-school care for the elementary ages, and we recognize that it is a need and that our families are interested. Macy After the Bell would cater to all Macy families K through 9th grade, offering a safe place for fun recreational activities and social and emotional development support, as well as educational help. So we are requesting $360,000 over the course of 3 years. And that would go towards a new van for us so we can transport kids, hiring site coordinators, counselors, cleaning personnel, and then funding like our program by itself, snacks, supplies, and field trips. Any questions?
Is there a tuition cost for the after-school program?
So our after-school program that is 6th through 8th grade is free, but we have programming summer, winter, and spring break, and that is $28 a day. But we also tend to low-income families, so it's a sliding scale based on income, and then we still accept CCRS. So if families do need help paying for it, we have other grants that we are currently with that will help, and then CCRS will help.
All right, any other questions? Jenny?
Do the Muhammad Seymour schools offer an after-school program for K through 5, or?
So we currently have a grant with the Champaign County Mental Health Board. We do BLAST, which is for K through 5th grade after school. You do have to pay for it, but like I said, CCRS can be accepted. And I believe that is the only that I'm aware of.
Dan?
Yeah, I just want to say that I've had some dealings with this organization in years past and sort of present. They do a lot in a small community that people don't realize really need it. And I know that you coordinate with other agencies also to receive funds, like United Way and the Community Foundation of East Central Illinois. So I appreciate your collaboration efforts and trimming this down to what the kids would need in that area. Thank you.
I just want to make sure that I'm understanding. So if this funding would specifically expand the program through the K through 5th grade, is that what this request would do?
It would be K through 5th grade as well as 9th grade. Yeah.
All right, anybody else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have the sleep program.
I think this is a board initiative. This is like one that the board asked for. So maybe I could speak to it if that's okay. And probably, though, Samantha could also speak to this a lot. So the SLEEP program is a program that actually comes out of the Regional Planning Commission, and it stands for something. And I'm going to find out what that is. I always remember it's Safety, Lighting, and Energy Efficiency Program. Wow. And the program basically, what it does is it puts into neighborhoods on residential homes, both rental homes and owner-occupied homes, little lights near the doors and in the yard, and then also provides Ring doorbells.
Video doorbells.
Yeah, the video doorbells. I will say that there are other components to sleep in its original manifestation, things like windows and things like that. But what the city of Champaign did, specifically targeting Garden Hills, is they did a modified sleep program. So the modified sleep program just focused on the lights and the doorbells, A, because they were cheaper, B, because studies have shown that both having the ability to monitor your home and the ability to have more light in the community improves safety. So then what we did is Samantha kept saying, we need sleep in Dobbins Downs. We need sleep in Dobbins Downs. And so I reached out because Chris Storr is sort of our GIS whisperer, and he talked to GIS, and he got these beautiful maps that are for both Dobbins Downs and Scottswood. And I'll say that, and my apologies to Mr. Storr, because first I said Shadowwood, and I got the wrong map, and then I was like, is that we reached out to RPC, and they are willing to manage the program for us. They came up with the program. I also had a conversation with our sheriff, and I basically asked him kind of, this was a conversation I had with Mr. Goss, actually one of the finance committee meetings. He was like, we should reach out to the sheriff and kind of ask for a heat map of like where in the county would this program make the most sense. And without any prompting, he was like, oh, so Dobbins Down and Scottswood. And I was like, okay, well, that's what we're planning. But then we were thinking, how could we expand this program beyond those sort of 2 unincorporated areas? And I should say there's 4 houses, I believe, in Dobbins Downs that are actually in the incorporated area. But we wouldn't like shut them out because that'd be kind of mean. So then I reached out to Diane and said, what about Rantoul? And hot off the presses, Rantoul is interested in participating, and you have that as an thing here. Now, I think in total, it's somewhere around 500 to 600 houses between the 3 neighborhoods that would be available. But obviously, they're not all going to participate. And so one of the things I think, Lisa over at RPC gave us a budget if 400 houses participated. I mean, that would be a really high participation rate. So I don't necessarily think, I guess what I could say is just like all RPC programs, we could set a dollar amount. It doesn't, I mean, I get the $1 million, that's fantastic. We wouldn't necessarily have to, because we could just fund as many houses as sign up. I have also spoken with the sheriff, although we might be a little bit late for it this year. They do door-to-doors in Dobbins Downs and Scottswood in April and May, and where they talk to the community and just reach out to them. And they said if we had a handout about this, that they'd be glad to hand out. But you'll see in the RPC materials that they put together, it includes some marketing. They have like what they did for Garden Hills is they had a postcard that they mailed to all of the houses. In talking to RPC, they said one of the harder nuts to crack is the houses that have renters and with the owners, but that they really think that that's an important piece. And there's so many rentals in these communities that if you shut it out, that it really would be shutting out a lot of folks. And I'll let Samantha speak because she really, I'll say, championed this program and had a lot to do with it at Garden Hills. In some ways, it's nice because Champaign kind of got the kinks out over in Garden Hills, so we could just kind of learn from them. But to me, having RPC on board and them, because they already do so many other assistance, and this is the kind of thing too where as they're reaching out to people in these places, they might also be some of their weatherization programs or some of their LIHEAP programs. This will just sort of become part of the menu of options that they offer. But I do think specifically in terms of this one, what we would need to do is kind of think of at what level we'd want to fund it, because $1 million would be like literally almost every home in those 3 neighborhoods. And they're not all going to sign up. So I don't know that we need a budget as if they all were going to sign up. In fact, the Rantoul, I don't think the Rantoul planning manager, Christopher Milliken, estimated that he thought 20 to 25% would sign up. And so that's one thing for us to keep in mind. RPC gave us a budget that was for everybody, which would be wonderful, but that's just not how the world works. Like, not everybody. But Samantha, you really had a lot to do with this program, so.
Yeah, I think we had great success out in Garden Hills. We also worked with local contractors that did the work. So I was going to see if the city of Champaign would also give the contractors list.
They already did.
Okay.
reached out to Champaign. I asked them for their contractors list. They've already provided it, and I've already forwarded it to RPC. But RPC may have already had it. But yeah, but I asked, that was one of the questions I asked Champaign, and they were like, yes, here are the folks. So we have that list. So again, those contractors already know what it is. They wouldn't have to like reinvent the wheel.
Right. And so you get a front door light, or front outside door light, back outside door light. You get a video doorbell of your choice. I think it's like 4 different brands that you can choose from. You have to have Wi-Fi at your home in order to be able to use the video doorbell. And then you get a light pole post. So it kind of sits midway in your driveway, so it gives you lighting also in your driveway as well. It was, I think, is really helping with the communities, just feel safer. Dobbins Down, as I've been screaming, just like Garden Hills, is very plagued with darkness through both neighborhoods. So I'm thankful that this is now expanding into Dobbins Down as well. Thank you.
One question I have for you, Samantha, and I did talk to both Delitzo and to the city of Champaign, and what they said is, in terms of the doorbells, the homeowner owns the content of the doorbell, but if they want to use that to interface with law enforcement in case something happens, they can. They're not like required to, but like, and there have been instances where they have. But one question I do have is, say somebody wants just the lights but doesn't want the doorbell, or vice versa, can you choose, or do you have to take it all?
You have options. You don't have to get the video doorbell. And some residents thought that it was directly connected to the police department, and that is not true. You own the footage. You own the video doorbell. And if something so happens to happen in your neighborhood, it would be nice that you would give that footage to law enforcement so they can help tackle the crime that's going on in our community.
If I can add into what you were saying, Stephanie, we actually have what we call National Night Out, which I think is all over the whole county. And that's where the policemen go, and they actually have like cookouts in the different neighborhoods in our community and things like that, or out at the park. And so those are great ways to get that information out. I'm sure we have another community in addition to this, just as a background.
And then from my understanding, the RPC did the original sleep program.
Oh, yeah, I called Delitzo, and I'm not joking. I was like, listen, would you be interested in this program? It's called SLEEP. He's like, yeah, you know, I came up with that, the acronym. He was like, obviously I would be interested. I was like, did not know that. So I was like, that's awesome. I was like, and you know, for me, that is, just to be blunt, the county doesn't have the capacity to roll out something like this on our own. We don't have that kind of staffing infrastructure. This is the world that RPC lives in, is getting services to people and communities. But the other thing is, we haven't done much in Rantoul. And so for me, I mean, I think the 2 unincorporated areas are really exciting. And, you know, we've had this big debate in this committee and in general, like, do we want to be in incorporated areas? But I mean, I do think we have seen gun violence in Rantoul. And, you know, Diane worked with the folks over in Rantoul to say, this is the neighborhood we'd want to target. Because I think this works best when you have a concentrated area that you're trying to work on. But I would like to see this, you know, I want to continue to have a conversation with RPC, is how can they continue to go after funding to continue this effort, just like they do the weatherization program and things like that. I mean, I think that this can be a really positive. And again, I also do like the fact that it's like Champaign, the city of Champaign did a piece, and we're doing a piece. And, you know, it would be nice if Urbana did, but I don't think it was on their landscape. But you know what I'm saying? Like, that's one of the things I like to think about with this ARPA money, is how do we work in concert together and not have to duplicate everything over and over. And this is a nice opportunity. And so I just also want to commend Samantha, because I said every time I saw Steve, he was like, what about I read, I count? I think every time I saw Samantha, she was like, what about sleep? And then also just a huge thank you to Chris Storr, who helped us with the mapping, and to our GIS staff, who literally, when they heard I actually needed Scottswood instead of Shadowwood, got us the right map within like 15 minutes.
And then just too, for clarification, most landlords, really, no one denied. No one denied. So it's a very easy process. Like they would come down to the office and sign and turn in the paperwork to get the equipment installed on their property. But everybody was for it. You know, we had a really good participation rate.
Oh, yeah, let me be clear, like, the landlords, once they got in touch with them, were all for it. The one thing I heard is sometimes tracking down the landlord and getting all the parties in one place. Oh, no, like, the landlords were like, yeah, put that on, because it improves, and to me, too, we're talking about this in terms of community violence, but it also, we're investing in people's properties in our community in areas that desperately need that kind of investment. And I mean, it's a small investment, but it's a material investment in people's personal safety. And that to me is one of the things that makes this attractive.
All right, anybody else?
Quick, I don't know if we would know this, or do we know what the opt-in rate for, okay, how do I phrase it? For the sharing of footage, like, because there's a way you can like sign up to have it shared, right? Isn't there?
And through the Champaign Police Department.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's through the Sheriff's Department as
Right.
well, or would it be?
I could reach out to Champaign. I could ask them for their opt-in rate for that, but also their participation rate in the program total, because that might help us inform. That is not a question I thought to ask. So I could reach back out to our contacts over there. And also just shout out to Champaign, because they've been super helpful with us. Samantha had a meeting. We had a meeting a while ago. They sent somebody to talk with us. And then I think I've asked them 200 questions they very much want this to go into other areas of the community. So I'll reach out to them and ask them both that. I don't know if they have those answers. Oh, I know they'll have the answers of how many people participated. I don't know if they have in the opt-in, but I'll ask both of those questions.
All right, anybody else? All right, next is Stop the Violence Program for Veterans.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for allowing us to come back once again to share our information regarding Stop the Violence program for veterans and families. I wanted to start with with our letter of intent. The letter of intent outlines the proposal that will provide transformative training and a pathway for healing and support for primarily veterans and their dependents on the dangers of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD illness. Targeting Champaign County citizens, we are seeking $500,000 annually over a 3-year period that will provide a combination of training, education, support, and capacity building that will reduce the violence in Champaign County caused by this illness. The funding will support the following, and we'll start with the PowerPoint. Healing the invisible wounds of mental wellness for veterans. The overall program purpose is to provide a combination of training, education, and the capacity of building that will reduce the violence in Champaign County. Educating, the program goals will educate the veterans and their families on mental health, the resources and the impact of PTSD, resulting in the implementation and the prevention and intervention strategies. Linkages to resources and services will be done in collaboration with among organizations and other partners. We want to increase leadership and capacity for veterans and veteran supporters to lead and facilitate the application of the trauma resources and training, provide interactive workshops and training for veterans and their families focused on mental health. I'll let you read.
Good evening. This is a very unique program, and it consists mainly of 4 parts. One part is the outreach and the recruitment component. The plan is to work with 50 veterans and their family members. That would be around 180 people in the first year, and they would participate in training and workshops so we can broaden the awareness of mental health issues, especially PTSD. And this outreach and recruitment component will be in collaboration with the VA in Danville. They will promote our program, and they will also help with outreach, as they oftentimes are the first stop when we encounter veterans in crisis, because they can provide the first aid when it comes to the crisis with the therapy, the inpatient therapy at the VA. But this program would be step 2 afterwards. The veterans would also seek trauma and trauma-informed care that will improve their safety. This program will host quarterly mental health and PTSD trainings, and will also focus on substance abuse disorders. In addition, trust-based relational intervention and increasing self-worth will be one component of the training. Another important factor is the peer support groups. It is well known in the veterans community that if you collaborate with other veterans that have experienced the same issues, it is oftentimes easier to receive the help, and veterans are more open to talk with their peers. We have small groups here in Champaign County, but not really a collaborated effort to really combine the different resources that are available. And this program would allow that veterans will build the leadership skills and the capacities to train other veterans and family members on mental health issues and substance abuse disorders and help that is available. The fourth component is the Community Advisory Board, and this will consist of veterans, the VA, and other partners in the community who will implement and evaluate the program on a regular basis. What makes this program stand out is really the focus, on the veteran, then the family, and then, of course, the community, because there is a lack of awareness in this community when it comes to veterans and PTSD issues. We have seen that recently in the news. When it comes to veterans and the criminal justice system, there have been a couple of cases that were standing out, and the numbers of veterans in our Champaign County Jail has increased specifically within the last year, and those are veterans that all have mental health issues that need to be addressed. We currently don't have a veterans court in our system, which we desperately need, but we don't have it yet, so we need to find other ways to address those issues. And as it was mentioned before, our closest VA is in Danville, and that VA provides outstanding services and addresses the needs. But what happens after a veteran is released from their treatment program? They're going back into their communities, sometimes marginalized communities, and there is a lack of resources that would provide really holistic services to address the issues. So not only at the end with the criminal justice system,
or legal services, but really start to address the root cause of the issues. So we can provide the services at the beginning, address issues, inform the families what is PTSD, how can we address it, what strategies can we implement to avoid veterans going into crisis. We currently have 17 veterans a day that commit suicide. It's not non-veterans, it's 17 veterans a day because of their mental health issues. And this is a 1.5% higher rate that veterans have than non-veterans. And the very problematic group right now is the 18 to 34-year-olds. Those are the veterans that we have seen that have been employed to the recently to Iraq or Afghanistan, that are now in the community and experience issues. And relying on the VA is one component. As like I said, they provide outstanding services. But as a community, we need to build a sustainable basis. And we have done that, several groups in the community. The veterans group here in Champaign is very tight-knit. And we have implemented certain strategies to address those issues, but this program would really focus on the mental health issues, the holistic approach. So we're not continuing the patchwork that we're doing right now, but really going to the root cause and prevent. The worst thing that can happen is this community, that we see veterans commit suicide, and have to admit that we did not see it. And the veteran population is a population that does not reach out for help a lot. So providing those services and having those different components would really allow us to address those issues.
I would like to go over our leadership team, starting with myself, Robbie C. Walker, VA Accredited Claims Agent, LLC, Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business. I retired from the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs with 30 years of service. After retirement, I opened up a private office in the Rantoul area at the Rantoul Business Center. By having access to that building, we have an auditorium, we have conference rooms, we have a lot of ways to support our veterans when they come to us. Also, we sought out to have even daycare for the families so that we can address these issues while there is someone looking after the children. I have 20 years with the connection of the Danville healthcare system. In those 30 years that I was working, a lot of that was in collaboration. I will also provide leadership and direction over this program. I will speak for Bishop Byron L. Smith, Sr. He'll be a consultant and trainer. His credentials is he completed over 3,000 mental health clinical face-to-face hours with individuals and their families. He's a leader in the mental health and faith-based sectors. So we will tap into the faith-based system with the churches, local churches, and he has ties in the community as far as the Chicago area. Obviously, he's coming out of the, California, and but he has ties to here and would like to come back and serve this community. He's an adjunct professor at Antioch University, Azusa Pacific University, and he will lead the training in the mental health. I will let Nicole finish the other two.
I'm Nicole Massey, and I have been working with veterans for the last 7 years, providing legal services, civil legal services at Land of Lincoln Legal Aid. I'm one of the only, there are only 2 veterans attorneys in the area outside of Cook County. So I've been working very closely with this community. I'm also the spouse of a veteran. So I've been seeing the issues in the community for the last 7 years. And most of the time, legal services comes in at the end when things are really bad. And currently, it is really housing issues. And I would say 80% of my cases are affected by mental health issues. This is not a great number, and working with individuals that have legal issues and you add the mental health component is not an easy job. And sometimes our legal system is not equipped to address those issues. So I would rather see programs that start at the beginning than rather trying to fix issues at the end. And if we can reduce the number of veterans that need legal assistance, civil or criminal, that would be a huge success in this county. Last year alone, I served 128 veterans with civil legal issues, and that is a very huge caseload for just one person. And there is no funding available to clone me and have somebody else do this job. So we need to address issues at the beginning. We also included in the team Grace Weldman, who is an expert in her field and has 25 years experience in public policy and strategic planning. And she will lead our TBRI workshops in making Knowing Your Worth workshops and provide really the educational part to veterans, the families, and the community. And when we speak about the community, of course, we also aim to educate law enforcement, state's attorneys, and judges in our community about those issues.
Over the last 25, 30 years, when I was working for the state of Illinois, our Champaign County office had over 15,000 cases in their possession. So I think in my time, I've done over 300,000 claims for veterans. And through this program, there'll be eligibility for some of the veterans to get additional care, possibly disabilities. Many of the veterans will not even acknowledge that they have a problem, but through this process, we hope to find some of those and try to get that repaired and get the health care and some of the other things that they need to provide for their families. This time, any questions or comments?
And just sort of to reiterate what I said to our first veteran conversation, I was thinking about this. We've been tasked, eventually, and, sooner rather than later, by the state legislature to basically put $1 million into veterans assistance as a county a year. And so thinking about, how are we going to do that? A program, right now we give $80,000 to veterans assistance. So we could, we have to figure out the funding mechanism of that. But once we do that, we could fund this program in its entirety, a stand-down program every year, staffing from, to staff out the veterans assistance and still provide 3 to 4 times the amount of direct assistance to veterans that, I'm sorry, I have a frog in my throat. But it does seem specifically with this program that we need to get you into touch with Michelle, who's there with the glasses on her head, who's kind of helping us spearhead that piece. But we also should bring in Vermilion County, because Vermilion County also has to give 0.02% of their EAV. And since, we've been having a lot of conversations about the connection with Danville, maybe we could do a regional type of thing that is with them and us. I'm not trying to push this off of ARPA, but ARPA isn't sustainable. That's sustainable until, the state legislature and their infinite wisdom changes their minds, but it doesn't seem like they're going to, right? And so they've basically tasked counties with do this, and we need to figure out how, right? And so I think that I think we could have a conversation, and maybe it would make some sense to have some ARPA startup money for this, but I think we should try to shift this to that sustainable funding stream. Because again, we're gonna have a real hard time, just to be blunt, giving away $1 million in this county to veterans assistance without structured programs like this. We're gonna need this kind of partnership in order to make this happen. And we're like kind of living in the house that we're building with this situation with the veterans assistance, but it's like a new landscape for veterans assistance in the state, and counties have been charged to figure it out. And so I think one of the things we should do is maybe think about how we leverage this ARPA money in that figuring it out stage, and then ensuring that we have a sustainable way to do the work with our veteran community, to be quite frankly, that we probably should have been doing all along. And that's not to take away the amazing work that the Veterans Assistance Commission already does. I mean, they do a great deal of work with the tiny piece of the budget we give them, but this is a chance for us to rethink. And we as a board are gonna have to think about how we fund that out. But we don't have an option to not. I mean, we've been told we're doing this by the state legislature, and so we're gonna, as a board, we're gonna have to figure that piece out in the next year.
We see this as a model
Right.
for the future.
Real quick, I agree with you, Stephanie, quite frankly. I'd like to see something like this sustained, and I know that it's very difficult. I remember when we first had to establish the VA assistance program here within the county, and that was a tough thing. And now we see that it's used more and more and more and more, and any other monies they could get, they have people waiting because they can only give them a couple $100 in the month, and that doesn't even hardly get groceries or a light on at this point. So I agree that because of the requests that we have and the amount of money we have, maybe we look at being creative with Danville and with other things and use some of these other opportunities that have been put on us to put that money towards that. So something like this could be sustainable, working with our VA assistants and the
And maybe thinking about,
vets.
right, one of the goals with the ARPA money is how do we leverage this for sustainable things in the future? So thinking about how we can use the pot of ARPA money that we have to get, you know what I mean, to leverage us to that sustainable future. And I also apologize because I don't think I totally understood your budget. So it's $500,000 a year for 3 years was the ask. Somehow I missed the word annual. So we have this little chart where we're like kind of keeping score of everybody's ask. So in this case, you got to add a 1 to that. So it's really, the ask was 1.5. So just, sorry, board. So just draw a little 1 in. You know, I try.
You mean you're human and you sometimes make mistakes, like
I
all
mean-
of us do?
Yeah, but I'm theoretically supposed to be the numbers person.
But still, you're human. We'll forgive you.
All right, anybody else? All right, thanks a lot for coming out.
Thank you.
Next, we have, last but not least, the YWCA. I just want to say for the record, so you guys know, the alphabetical order thing was Stephanie's idea.
And the next time you come before the board, you'll be like, the Champaign County. I noticed that a lot of folks they have that C in their name, and that next time I'm sure you'll come up with a way to put something before that Y.
It's going to be AAA, YMCA, YWCA, sorry.
This way? Is that, oh, there it is, there it is. Oh. Okay, since we need to make sure that this is actually gonna work, and if it doesn't, then we need to do something else, I'm gonna run this first. So I would like you to meet Melissa.
My background does not look very good. I am an ex-drug addict who is in recovery. I had collected a lot of charges. I didn't really have a lot of job history. Any job history I did have was very short term. It was housekeeping, fast food. Nothing ever lasted very long. I started Strive so I could build up my computer skills and really be able to prove myself as being professional. And now I have a new job as a business administrator, and I use a computer every day. So it helped me get the job, and it has helped me to be able to do the different platforms that I need in my job.
All right, that worked. I love it. So good evening. I'm Andrea Rundell. I'm the Executive Director of the YWCA Champaign County, formerly YWCA of the University of Illinois. But yeah, we'd been there since 1884. We figured it was time to actually get out in the community instead. So we're out here. We came out into the community in 2020 with the pandemic, which of course was exactly the best kind of timing that everybody had at the beginning of the pandemic and starting a new program, addressing new people. What we are here to talk to you about this evening is the Strive program. This is our program for digital skills. This is our third year in it. We were one of 5 organizations across the country that were given funding from google.org to pilot this as a program. So we're still kind of in the piloting stage, especially since we had to work our way through a couple of years of pandemic. But we're getting good at it, and we're having a great time with it. So let me tell you a little bit more about how this works. Even before the pandemic, we were all very clear that the digital divide was becoming really, really problematic. The digital divide we mostly address in this area when we talk about broadband. There's 2 other components to it. You need that Wi-Fi, you need to be able to get connected, you need the technology too to get on there, and you need the skills to be able to use that technology. Even before the pandemic, 1/3 of the American workforce did not have the basic digital skills needed to get a job. And I'm just talking about being able to get on the computer, get through the internet, find some place that you need to connect to, deal with that. Not email, not documents, not spreadsheets, not any of that. And in 2022, with the pandemic and suddenly everybody going online, we now have 92% of the jobs available to the American workforce requiring digital skills. So we have this great big disconnect. And I'm happy to say that we can help with one little piece of that problem. What we're able to do is, in a 10-week program, give people the digital skills that they need to be able to get in there and move on to other things, right? Melissa there, we helped her figure out how to get in there and do it so she can now use those other platforms. We don't teach big platforms, we teach the Google basic stuff, but enough for people to get in there and say, okay, now I can go and apply to Parkland. Right? I can go and get a certificate. I can go to the union and say, hey, actually, I do want to be one of your guys, right? Come on. So just having that ability to get on there and move forward makes a huge difference to people. We have found, we've had about 60 people in 18 months that we've been working with this. And they've had, by the end of the 10 weeks, an increase in income of 40%. So going from like 20-something to 30-something. This is enormous for people who are living at that kind of a level, and it makes a huge difference in their lives. So what we do, we make sure that we can provide this technology to people. We loan out laptops, Chromebooks, to everybody who's in the program. They get to take them home, work with them. We do this in person. We do this virtually. We do it in English. We do it in Spanish. And because of course it's when you successfully complete the course, you get to keep the laptop. So we're trying to cover those two pieces. You need that technology. You need the skills to use it. We're getting them to you and then saying, let's go. We don't say, okay, off you go. We say, let's go. We have partnerships that we're building. We have built with Parkland College. Adult Ed sends people our way when they show up and want to take a class but can't even get on there to enroll. We send them right back and say, hey, Tawana, we got another one for you. Here you go. We're working with WorkNet again. And, when people come into our classes and say, okay, I don't want to try and get another certificate or something, but I do need to figure out how to get a job, we walk them over to WorkNet and we say, Justin, dude, let's talk. We got this really great person here, right? We don't say bye. Our plan is to never say goodbye. Maybe they don't know that, but our plan is to be with them throughout the entire thing, make sure that's working. I just read a report on community colleges recently saying how important it is to have that ongoing support, because people are so unaccustomed to that atmosphere that it's very difficult for them to actually get through it. So that's what we're trying to do. Our business is making sure that people are being successful. Economic opportunity is where we want to see that happen. And we do it within our mission of eliminating racism and empowering women. So I can tell you we have something on the order of 65% of our clients are Black. Another 25% are Latino. The remainder are generally white. They almost entirely, they're not entirely women completely, because we don't turn people away. But they are almost entirely between the ages of 25 and 55. The majority of them support families. The majority of them are at or below 150% of the federal poverty level when they join us. We are talking about retirees. We're talking about the veterans. We're talking about people who've come out of the workforce and have to go back in for one reason or another, who've been out for a long time, who've been homemakers, who've not completed high school, everybody and anybody. Because, like I said, this is a third of the workforce that's out there that can't do this. And all they need is that push to help them be able to get a job or move forward in getting more skills so that they can move up. I think that's it. It's kind of like straightforward.
What was the percentage you said are below 150% of the poverty line?
The majority, I think, I didn't write that down, but I would say 85 to 90% are below 150% of the federal poverty level.
Quick question. Your request is for 50, and is that right? YWCA
Yeah,
Strive.
I'm going to use the little trick that I just learned. Would you guys put a 1 in front of that?
I was just going to say, is this a one-year deal, or how long does this last? So that's my question.
50,000 would be 1 year.
Okay.
And so I did not anticipate 3-year funding. I'm sorry. So yes, please, just a little 1 right there. If you want to add extra zeros are always free, right? Yeah. Right. So lots of zeros.
No calories in zeros,
See,
right?
This is it.
My other question would be that I understand you're giving them a Chromebook and also the education to use it and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. So this is already being done with staff that's on hand? Or are you adding that?
We have right now, we have a full-time program coordinator who speaks English. She does about 10 people per quarter, some of them online, some of them in person. We have just added a part-time temporary Spanish-speaking coordinator, really thrilled. And what I told her was, I only have the funding to keep you around for a little while, but we're going to find the funding. and then I'm going to make you full-time, and we're going to go crazy on it.
So, thank you for coming. Traditionally, I've stated this before, the YM, or no,
We're the YW. It's the YM
YWCA.
versus the YW,
Okay.
and the YM is over here, and the YW is really cool right
Okay.
here.
Okay, because I would love to see you guys reach out to the Housing Authority. Have you? I didn't see them in here as one of your.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of space in there, but yes, we've been working sort of in the background with Jennifer over at the Housing Authority. We have worked with Dream in Rantoul. That's actually one of our best sites is in Rantoul. We have been working with the New Hope Church in Rantoul, which is a primarily Spanish-speaking church. Cunningham Township, saw Danielle here. We get a lot of referrals through her. We're just expanding as much as we can and getting out to people. Our biggest challenge is actually reaching people because you can't reach these people with an email.
Right. And that's what I was going to say, that, I mean, I would love for you to, with the collaboration through the Housing Authority, to be able to talk to some of the residents in their housing complexes. I think that would be a win-win.
That would be awesome.
Right.
I just recruited someone from the Housing Authority to my board, but then she moved away.
Uh-oh.
So I got to do that again. Any context, let me know.
And that's awesome. You said that they increased their living wages up to 40%.
Yes.
And 65% of your program helps Black and 25% Latinos. That's awesome.
Yes.
Thank
We're
you.
thrilled about it.
Thank you. And I hope you do get that chance to expand with our help.
I just want to commend you. Yours is another one of the initiatives. I don't remember when you first sent in your letter. It was a long time ago. And I appreciate you persevering with us till we got to the second round of funding and also persevering with us tonight. So I appreciate both of those things a great deal. So I just wanted to say that.
We're here with a lot of really fantastic programs, so no time actually wasted doing this.
All right, anybody else? Now, did you say 92% of jobs require digital skills now?
Yes.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's
it makes sense, but that's something else.
And yeah, juxtaposed against the people who don't have those skills. And in this kind of a community where, you know, everybody's online because everybody's connected to the university in one way or another and all of that sort of thing, you don't even think about that. We have a cohort right now. One woman's a veteran. She's making $28,000 a year. This is ridiculous. And she, after 2 weeks, is able to get on the computer and get connected to the internet. And we can't wait to get her going further.
I was just going to say, during the modified sleep program this summer, that was the reason for the decline for the video doorbell, because they did not know how. Some elders in our community don't even know how to tap in on the internet. So, you know, the city was saying that maybe it would be good if they had someone that would be able to teach them how to use the video doorbell. So I think this is very awesome. I mean, you would serve anyone, right? Or
Absolutely,
is it just,
absolutely. I think I mentioned we frequently have retirees who are moving back into the workforce because they need to get a job.
Right.
And we have them. We're trying over the last year to find funding specifically to do Strive programming for seniors,
Right.
to be able to address them the way they need to be addressed. I mean, different groups of people learn in different ways. We wanted to make sure we were able to cover that. We haven't got it yet, but we will.
All right, anybody else? All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you letting us have the time to talk to you tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next, excuse me. Next on the agenda is discussion of funding plans. Yeah, Stephanie, you wanna?
So I don't feel prepared personally to then make a decision after. I want to commend, I am really excited that we live in a community where there's this much passion and this much I didn't hear anything today that wasn't worthy of funding. So now we have to decide. So my suggestion is, what if each of us went back, and again, what we have for this pot of money is 2.407963. If each of us wanted to go back and think about, if we personally were, king for a day, how would you divide it up? And then maybe we could come back, and I'll just share with you, and take this for what it's worth. These are the 5 things I'm going to be thinking about. I'm going to be thinking about, does the program build lasting infrastructure that will last beyond the landscape of our ARPA funding? I'm going to think about, does the program build partnerships that will help sustain the initiative? I'm going to think about, how does the program complement other ARPA initiatives that other governmental agencies have been doing in our community, or that we have been doing? There's so many different folks that have talked about, there's so much overlap, and that's okay, because each of these programs has a different niche. But thinking about how all of this ARPA funding works together, I'm going to think about how each of these programs is able to leverage different resources, both now and for sustainability. And then finally, and I kind of think this one's the most important, how each of these programs will impact people in our community right now that have real needs, and address those needs and stand in the gap for those people. Because at the end of the day, what this committee is supposed to be about is addressing the violence, and that I think has been as much of an endemic in our community as COVID was in itself. And so thinking about how each of these programs does that will be the driving thing for me. So those are the 5 things I'm going to try to think about. Might be hard, because I kind of think all of them really do a lot of those things, but just so you know where my brain is.
All right.
Wait, Stephanie, could you repeat that number one more time?
2.4.
2,400,000, $2,407,963.
All right. So I think, are we in agreement that we should discuss the details of the funding recommendation we'll make to the full board at a future meeting? Now, when it comes to the discussion of the future meeting date, Megan provided me with some dates in which this room is open, and there are several that if we there are several that if we pick that date, we would be able to get the recommendation on the May County Board agenda, which could speed up this process. I don't know how people feel about that. That's through the 15th of May, because the 15th is the last day. The dates are Monday, May 1st, Monday, May 8th, Wednesday, May 10th, Monday, May 15th. And if we pick any of those dates, like I said, we could have a recommendation for the May County Board.
I'm in the minority here, I know, but first half of May likely, that still be planning season, going hot and heavy still. Depends on the weather, of course. But again, I'm in the minority, but if it were just totally my discretion, it'd be more the end of May, and to get onto the June. But that's my preference.
I don't know with board rules if it's allowed, but is it something where Aaron could make his recommendations to you to be considered at the meeting if we wanted to do it first half of May? Would you be able to?
Well, yeah, I could make my preferences known.
Right, yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Okay. So
It's just
if
that
we had to do it that way.
I mean, it's again, I mean, it's
I
just,
don't like,
wouldn't be able
yeah,
to-
I don't like excluding anybody from discussion,
Well,
but
I
yeah.
understand, and I'm
Yeah.
not saying that that's the only reason to postpone. I'm the only reason to postpone till later in the month or so. But I can make my preferences known. I mean, that shouldn't be a problem.
I just want to make sure we weren't going
No,
to
I
fully
understand. I
exclude
appreciate
you.
it.
Yeah.
Thanks. No,
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Aaron
Thanks.
has no issues expressing himself clearly. Stephanie?
Though I think, so what did you say, May 1st, May 8th, May 10th, May 15th? Randomly, I think all of those actual dates work with me. However, I will not be here at the May full board meeting because I'll be running a conference down in Carbondale. I mean, that's really neither here nor there, but just, I'm out of town a lot in May, June, and July, so that's just the way it is. But I don't know if that matters, but just so you know that I won't be here at that full board meeting.
I'm clear on Monday, so anytime will be good.
Are you looking to get it on the May or just discuss it in May with the full board? That's my question, because if we, because there'll be discussion, I think, from the rest of the committee or the board.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I'd hope that once we send it to the full board could make a final decision. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, is this something that we need to have done by May? I mean, I just, like, my thinking is, the sooner is probably the better, because we do have a deadline, but it's 1 month.
I mean, I do think, this is a pretty, we're talking about a lot of money that we want to give away. I also will say, though, I would not feel comfortable going beyond June. Some of these
Right.
folks have budgets that, started on June 1st. Some of them have school year budgets. And I know that, like, it's not like we vote on these and then instantly they start. Kathy then has to execute agreements with each of these agencies, and it's a heavy lift. So I would be okay with us waiting till June if we wanted to do, like, the May, I don't know if May 22nd is available, or, you know what I mean, like, later in the month, and then bring it to the full board. I think that's fine. I don't think anything beyond that is fine, especially since theoretically July is our, like, we don't meet as much in July. Like, I think if we can give this all to Kathy, if we do that, that means then the board needs to make that decision in June. They don't get to have, like, deep deliberation time, right? It would not be okay for them to say, we're going to come back, you know what I mean? Like, we would need to decide that night in June.
Well, isn't the hope that we've made the deep deliberation and they accept our recommendation?
It's the hope.
But Monday, May 22nd is available. All right, does anybody have any objections to May 22nd, Monday? All right, 6:30, May 22nd, Monday. Let's call that the next meeting. And
I think that's a good idea, if I can say, because it seems like the May Committee of the Whole and the County Board are going to come up really quick, real quick. And then is it July where we don't, and then, of course, July we don't have a cow, but that way we'd have plenty of time. And I think after our recommendations of that, if we would spread that information out through our caucuses or via email or whatever, then maybe we can discuss that and pare down our questions to be to the point of what and how much, because 5 mil and we've got 2. So,
Well, actually, more than 5 mil, because that one, we've got to put the 1 in front of.
A
Well,
few
apparently
of them.
all of them we have to
Thank
put
you.
1 in front of. The other thing I wanted to, though, mention, too, is, yes, to that point, if all of us can be having conversations with, we are supposed to be representing the full board, having some conversations within the caucus, I think, would be very helpful. If nothing else, we don't want any shocks, like we bring the recommendation and, the rest of the board is like, egads, what were you thinking?
yeah, certainly. All right, does anybody else have anything, any comments? All right, seeing no other business, I call this meeting adjourned.